We invite famous Kazakh archaeologists to our Beyond Time TV program, who will tell us more about the latest developments in archaeology and share the history of the amazing historical discoveries. These studies have contributed to the ancient history timeline. Eastern Kazakhstan, the Kyzyltas village in the Ulan district. The regional center Oskemen is 30 kilometers away. There's a valley of ancient necropolises in this area. We are at the location of the huge monument called Mound with a Mustache. It was discovered and recorded by Zainolla Samashev's scientific expedition for the first time in 1972. The huge mound has lived its 1,000-year life. Nowadays, the mound is overgrown with grass on which local cattle graze. The eminent archaeologist, Doctor of Historical Sciences Zainolla Samashev, dreamed of working on the monument for a long time, waiting for an opportunity. This opportunity is a regional program of archaeological research, which was initiated by the head of the region, Danial Akhmetov, in 2020. The Mound with a Mustache is a common name for a number of monuments from different eras, starting with Saka. They are all united by a special structure, a central layout and two mustaches. Their size, length, direction, and method of construction vary and are therefore of interest to everyone who studies them. Near the Kyzyltas village, there is a whole group of mound with mustaches. The monuments have already been studied. In particular, Firaya Arslanova studied the Kyzyltas burial ground in detail in the 70s. This is her great contribution to the development of Kazakh archaeology. It was believed that the mounds with mustaches were erected exclusively in central Kazakhstan. The Kyzyltas finds are now kept in the East Kazakhstan Museum. These findings are of great value to science, such as bow plates dating from the 8th to 9th centuries AD. According to the hypothesis made by Zainolla Samashev, the mound refers to the Hunno-Samartian time. This hypothesis is confirmed by the central stone lying. However, an earlier period is not excluded. The excavation approach is used by Kazakhstani archaeologists for the first time. Usually, the central fence was examined and the mustache was opened. A new method, a large area is immediately exposed.
Общая площадь раскопа у нас получается с 90 на 100.
The total excavation area is 100 by 100 meters. The main structure and surrounding areas will be opened. We will look for buried structures, such as ritual altars. We will go deep at least 30 to 40 centimeters. Of course, the depth will be greater in places that are in direct contact with archaeological sites to look for the presence of any structures. If not, then there will be a general leveling at the same level. In order to clear the targeted area from the soil layer and open the mound, a team of archaeologists will work all summer for 8 hours a day, excluding rainy weather from the schedule. The task is difficult but ambitious.
Это затратно. Ресурсов требует больших людских.
It takes a lot of time and human labor. We apply the method of splitting according to the orthophoto map that was adopted from the St. Petersburg archaeologists. We shoot the markers using a tachyometer. This device gives geometric accuracy. Furthermore, we place an excavation, for example, rectangular and corner points, edges. We take tachyometer coordinates, insert them into our device, and then use the search method to find the necessary angles. We got a huge geometrically regular rectangle.
Прямоугольник, но огромный.
The detachment employed students from the Amanjolov East Kazakhstan State University, specialty Digital Humanities.
Они при помощи этих цифровых технологий
They research history using digital technologies. They use the tachyometer. They are accepted into the staff as scientific workers. They do drone surveys, tachyometric surveys, orthophoto plans, and so on. Well, we will also teach them an archaeological approach. The young people joined archaeology armed with new research methods.
Это, можно сказать, только начало эры.
This is only the beginning of the era of geomagnetic, electromagnetic scanners and radars. They show certain information. Of course, you still need to be able to decipher information. Maybe there will be such devices that will show precise and detailed information. But also, in any case, there's a certain proportion of deviations and anomalies, and it will be necessary to check. Therefore, a simple shovel must still be used in archaeology. Despite the era of high technologies, the usual archaeological shovel has not yet been cancelled. In addition to students, the detachment includes local residents and specialists invited from other regions of the country. Moreover, in pre-quarantine times, scientists were joined by their colleagues from different countries. But back to our Mustache. Here is a stone layout. According to our assumptions, according to the assumptions of Zainolla Samashev, this is a system of fences. One Mustache consists, for example, of a certain number of burials and memorial stone laying. Have human remains been found under such a Mustache? Well, as a rule, no. But they are of an earlier period. There are usually two central stone laying. In one is the burial of a man, in the other a horse. Sometimes they are empty. The mound and Mustache were built from local materials. The existence of the stones is visible on the nearest slopes of Mount Nazar. One of the main versions of archaeologists is that the Mustache is not a solid stone ridge. It consists of a series of rounded fences. What is hidden in each is to be found out. Generally, the Mustache is not much different from similar objects. Smooth arcs are oriented to the east, which is no coincidence.
Версий можно выложить тысячи.
There are thousands of versions, including some astronomical calculations. But exactly what is to the east, the sunrise of life. It's sacred. Believe in the afterlife and human rebirth.
Перерождение человека.
In order to understand each object, archaeologists have to interact with different sciences, including the chemistry, biology, mathematics, and physics. Archaeologists uses a whole spectrum of scientific disciplines in order to study the archaeological sources.
Мы здесь и геофизики, и геодезисты, топографы.
Here we are geophysicists, surveyors, topographers, and anthropologists. We are zoologists and paleozoologists. We are chemists. We must know the basic foundations of chemistry for the preservation of certain materials, for processing and disinfection.
Материалов, допустим, по обработке, обеззараживанию, допустим.
Samat Samashev came to the excavations from the capital of Kazakhstan. He was born in this land, Aul Bisterek. He participates in this expedition as a researcher. He's engaged in the description of the artifacts and other scientific research works. He approaches everything with special warmth. From childhood, he knew that these places are unusual and sacred. He graduated bachelor's and master's degree from Kazgu. Now, he's a doctoral student at the Eurasian National University with a degree in archaeology and ethnology.
Ең алғаш қазба жұмыстарына 98 жылы қатыстық бер елде. Зейнолла ағаның жетекшілігіменен.
My first excavations were in 1998 at Berel. We explored the mounds of Berel under the leadership of Zainolla. We were digging the 11th mound of Berel and I saw those 13 horses and their horns. You can say that this is a unique moment. These horns covered with patterns. There were many finds, but these horns, masses on horses, they really impressed me.
Жылқыға тағылған маскадағы мүйіз сол әсер етті деп айтуға болады сол кезде. Керемет.
Samat told reporters about the arrangement of the archaeological camp where scientists live throughout the season.
Бұл енді алдымызда тұрған палатка, шатыр. Бұл енді лаборатория, далалық лаборатория. Осы жерде енді қазба барысында.
This is a step laboratory. It is intended for various scientific works. For instance, the findings are processed here and the descriptions are written.
Бұл жақта да бізде міне ғылыми қызметкерлер жұмыс жасайды. Осы жерде отырып табылған.
Our scientists work here. They process the materials such as ceramics, bones, and various stone products. They define what it is, write a short description and number. They do different jobs here.
Сипаттамасын жасап, нөмірлеп деген сияқты, тағы басқа сол сияқты жұмыстар жасайды осы жерде отырып. Бұл да енді археологтарға арналған вагон. Осы жерде енді Zainolla Samashev.
This is a wagon for archaeologists. Zainolla Samashev and other researchers live here. Everything is arranged inside. There's a table and all the amenities. You can sit and work there.
Ыңғайлы компьютермен тағы басқа. Жарықтың мына жақта ток тартылған.
We have electricity, which is very convenient for work.
Жұмыс істеуге ыңғайлы. Бұл жер енді Ақбауыр.
This place, Akbawir, is located near the city. We are located on the territory of a museum reserve. Therefore, good conditions have been created here. At excavations in a distant mountainous area or somewhere in the steppe, there is an engine to create such conditions. A special generator generates electricity.
Мынау алдымыздағы далалық ас үй деп айтуға болады. Шатыр тігілген арнайы осы жердегі.
This is our steppe canteen. Archaeologists and everyone who participates in the excavations eat here. This is our dining room. We eat and drink tea at the dastarkhan. Food is prepared here.
Тамақ ішетін, шай ішетін жеріміз тамақ әзірлейді деген сияқты.
Since we are talking about field cooking, the diet of archaeologists is not always a standard set of pasta and stew. Yeldos Kariev practices cooking dishes from the menu of ancient nomads. We have become witnesses and tasters of such a historical reconstruction. Put in the stomach. Is this the meat of a whole lamb? Yes, whole. 2-year-old lamb. Salt, pepper, garlic. Each one adds to taste. You can add black pepper and red pepper as seasoning for meat. After the chopped lamb has put in its own stomach, the meat is put into a previously prepared pit and is carefully covered with a layer of clay from a nearby river. In the process of cooking, scientists said that this is how the warriors cooked meat on campaigns. No cauldron is needed. The only thing that is required is a lamp, a fire, and time. This is what happens after the stomach is covered with clay, in which the meat of a young lamb was immersed. Steam will be discharged through this tube. The dish will be cooked for 8 hours. Sometimes it takes 1 day. I was told that meal quality will depend on the thickness of the clay. If suddenly something does not work, then I will be to blame. Fortunately, everything worked out and the lamb disappeared, this time in the stomachs of archaeologists, much faster than it was prepared. Several days in the camp of archaeologists completely detach us from the outside world. Everything fades into the background, except for a disciplined life, where the earth rammed by time gradually, layer by layer, moves in the embankments, exposing the stones laid by the inhabitants many years ago. There is already something is already looming. The central objects, the layout, its real dimensions, the structure of the stones were almost discovered. We opened the edges of 2 mustaches. A wide area is now beginning to justify itself. There are already drawn structures in one line, and there you can trace from the base of the mustache some kind of scattering stones. Scientists' expectations are to find ritual and any other special constructions. But just as it takes time for a good kombe to see the result of the work of archaeologists, we need to return here at the end of the season. The camp at the foot of the Akbaur Hill is preparing for the conservation of facilities for the winter and summing up the results.
Странное ощущение в этом году. Незавершенности, ощущение незавершенности.
Such a strange feeling this year, a feeling of incompleteness. The feeling that, unfortunately, it was not possible to implement what was intended. According to the plan, I wanted to fully excavate.
Не удалось осуществить то, что задумано было. Я хотел полностью раскопать.
I wanted to shoot the whole area, because not a single mound in Kazakhstan, a mound with a mustache with stone ridges has been excavated to the end. No, not one. More than 50 burial mounds have been excavated, but none of them has been explored, including ours. Thus, no one dug up the space between the mustaches and ridges both in Kazakhstan and in neighboring regions, where there are such monuments like in Volga region in the Urals.
Где такие памятники есть по Волжье на Урале.
A mound with a mustache a month later appears before us in a completely different form. The yellowed grass indicates autumn.
На памятнике вот курган с усами.
According to the terms of reference, a part of the northern mustache was opened, the total length of which is 130 meters, and we discovered 30 meters. Look, as we assumed that the mustache consists of a system of fences that are adjacent to each other, they are sometimes located with a small gap. Here in particular, a pottery fragment or rim was found. This is due to a funeral feast or some other memorial rites. We also examined the central object or the mound to which the mustache adjoins.
Также нами был исследован центральный объект, так скажем, сам курган, к которому примыкают усы.
Clearing the surface revealed the presence of soil of a different color, which was initially taken as a burial spot. The excavations dispelled this assumption, but allowed to find in different places the bones of an animal and a fragment of a broken vessel.
Это было место для проведения.
It was a place for holding some kind of cult memorial actions, which we also consider as one of the versions. Maybe it was a total burial in ancient times. Everything was taken out, valuable items were seized, and other organic materials eventually disappeared.
Другие органические материалы и так далее со временем исчезло.
The mound was empty. This is not a failure for archaeologists, but instead, it's a valuable discovery. It's possible that before us is a cenotaph, a symbolic burial of one of whose body was impossible for various reasons to bury, according to the right of the ancestors. A warrior could have perished in distant lands, and such an empty mound was erected in his memory. However, Samashev's team is inclined to the version that this barrow with a mustache is a cult ritual place, relying on similar finds that are found throughout Kazakhstan. Can we assume the date using the found remains, for example, bone stuff? On bone remains, yes. Of course, we'll radiocarbon the date, but they may not be related to the time of creation. It can also be part of the food. For example, the ancient robbers left it. However, the analysis will be carried out. A sufficient number of fragments survived. Using this vessel, we can also make certain conclusions, comparative dating or thermoluminescent method, etc. We see only the first step of research on this monument. An area of 130 by 100 meters will be cleaned. Archaeologists plan to work on it for at least 2 more years. A thick sediment layer, apparently of mud flow nature, is covered by structures of different time. The value of the mound is that it is the first monument on the territory of East Kazakhstan, which is studied by such a large-scale method. This will give new material to scientists to understand what value did the ancients put in the construction of barrows with mustaches.
тоже один из феноменов.
This is also one of the phenomena of world archaeology. Someone associates a mustache with the sun, etc. These sweeping, detailed studies can help answer many questions. The mustaches are like rays of the sun, or a reference to the mustache of a dragon from the country from which the Han tribes came to the steppe is a theory, but their filling in this case is an interesting detail. Each mustache consists of a chain of fences, inside of which there may well be burials of different times, and now there are traces of funeral rites. The mustache was used by their creators as a family necropolis and a place of worship.
В районе Северного Уса была найдена керамика. Вот, венчик сильно отогнутый.
Pottery was found in the area of the northern mustache, corolla strongly bent. It is either a bowl with a bent rim, almost flat, or a part of a vessel. Well, let's see by analogy. The dishes are typical of the Huns. In general, maybe the complex is of different times. There may be monuments from different eras.
Сам характерный для гуннов. Ну, вообще, может быть, комплекс разновременный. Там могут быть разные памятники разных эпох.
Scientists have not made any conclusions yet. They have just discovered this mystery.
Вот это явление
I associate this phenomenon with the movement of the Huns from east to west.
и вот начало первого.
I think the beginning is that the first such monuments appear exactly on the territory of modern East Kazakhstan. And this one is one of those big mounds.
Таких больших курганов.
During the expedition in the past season, one of the detachments of Zainolla Samashev discovered new objects of this kind. 2 mounds with mustaches were recorded in East Kazakhstan at an altitude of 2,700 meters. These are the highest monuments of this kind. A team of researchers will definitely visit them next year. Closing the season on Akbaur and summing up the discoveries of the past, we also think about the future. Very soon, Kazakhstan will celebrate its 30-year independence. It's time to think about our country in the flow of history.
Без прошлого не бывает будущего. Это не обычная фраза, это имеет глубокий смысл.
There is no future without the past. This is not an ordinary phrase. It makes a lot of sense, because we do not notice that at every step we are standing on the shoulders of the past.
С древнейших времен, по меньшей мере с эпохи бронзы, здесь процесс шел непрерывный процесс этногенеза.
We must show that since ancient times, at least since the Bronze Age, there has been a continuous process of ethnogenesis and cultural genesis. We are the direct descendants of those people who lived 3,500 to 4,000 years ago. Here is the Botai culture, 5,000 years ago. We say that our ancestors domesticated the horse. They domesticated the horses and made kumis. We are the descendants, and we still do the same thing as them. We want to preserve our culture and language. This is only thanks to archaeology and the historical past, and our customs and rituals are different, which we are trying to revive and find the roots of these ancient rituals. 40 years ago, academic science believed that the early Iron Age, the Saka era, or as it is called in Europe, the Scythian era, begins only from the 5th century BC. Modern researches of Kazakhstani scientists show that the culture of the Saka appearance was born in the middle of the 9th century BC. The proof of this is the finds of 2019 on the mounds of Yeleke Saze, which we will definitely tell about in the next issues of the Beyond Time project. But before leaving the picturesque places of the Kalba Mountains, we decided to visit another place, which was hidden in the rocks 15 kilometers from the mound with the mustache. Not far from the picturesque Sibin Lakes, on the slope of the mountains, there's a fortified Buddhist monastery, a Ablai kit of the 17th century. Although it is difficult to call this example of a Lamais monastery a fortress now, only ruins. The outlines of the buildings can only be seen due to the fact that for several years, a group of archaeologists worked here, who cleared the remains of the walls from centuries-old layers of soil. The monastery was built in 1654 by the Jungarian Taisha Ablai, not to be confused with the Kazakh Ablai Khan, who played a decisive role in the fight against the Jungars in the 18th century. The place is of great tourist interest and amazes with its scale those few who manage to get to it. Jungar Fortress Ablai is fenced by a wall 2 kilometers long, or 2,125 meters to be exact. In the middle, a temple building in Buddhist style, 45 by 20 meters. The building was crowned with a magnificent roof with ceramic tiles of such an azure color. Can you imagine what this complex looked like in the 17th century? At one time, the Western Mongol tribes of the Oirats settled on the territory of present-day East Kazakhstan. Jungars, this is how these tribes unite. In order to develop the region, they erected fortresses. So, a fortification with a Buddhist temple and a library appeared here. But in less than 15 years, this complex will be burnt down and empty as a result of civil wars. Almost 100 years later, Russian researchers will discover the ruins and transfer birch bark manuscripts to St. Petersburg, which will later become valuable exhibits of the ancient museum through the repository of Oriental manuscripts of the Kunstkamera. The Institute of Oriental Manuscripts of the Russian Academy of Sciences is considered the successor of this collection. In 2019, Natalia Yampolskaya, a research fellow of the Institute, came to the Altai, the golden cradle of the Turkic People's Conference in Oskemen, to share the research results. The specialists have the opportunity to study the fresh finds of Kazakhstani archaeologists along with the Russian collection. I came to Kazakhstan for the first time in 2018 at the invitation of Karl Baypakov. He invited me to participate in a project to research the heritage of Ablai Kit. This is connected with the study of written sources in Mongolian and Tibetan languages, which were discovered in Ablai Kit as early as the 18th century.
Сейчас в мире не так много известно рукописей на бересте монгольских. Есть несколько мест, где их находили в Монголии.
Now in the world, there are not so many known Mongolian birch bark manuscripts. There are several places where they were found in Mongolia. Usually, this is the 17th century. Ablai Kit became one of the places where such fragments were found. Why are these fragments so interesting? This is not just a Mongolian letter. This is the so-called clear letter. This is an alphabet that was developed by the great Buddhist scholar Lama Zaya Pandita, who is directly related to Ablai Kit, because he was the brother of Ablai Taiji. He came to Ablai Kit to illuminate this temple. This is most likely the earliest Oirat manuscript on birch bark. In general, the earliest Oirat manuscript that has survived. So, it is very rare. Therefore, the study of these birch bark fragments, which are found today in Ablai Kit, is very important. If we bring this matter to the end and publish it, this will be a sensational finding. Another amazing feature of Ablai Kit is that since the 18th century, there have been detailed sketches and plans of the fortress, according to which the complex can be reconstructed in detail. Unfortunately, this year, no research was carried out on the site. Ablai Kit, with its secrets, comes to desolation again. We hope that an open-air museum will nevertheless appear here, attracting scientists and tourists. Having studied the surroundings of Oskemen, our film crew goes deep into the region, to the border with China, where the Yeleke Saze Valley stretches among the Tarbagatai Mountains. The past events that lost in time are able to gain clarity only in one case: if artifacts extracted from the bowels of the earth fall into the hands of researchers. Archaeologists can restore the whole picture one by one, beyond space, beyond time.